This society, in the course of 60 or 70 years, actually for probably about 20 of those years, floundered with idealism because there was doubt as to whether or not you could actually have a constitutional republic and a vital economy in the same kettle. But after about 20 years of doubt, what emerged was slowly evolving fascism. A form of government that takes from everyone and then redistributes according to a system of privilege. And if you're in on the privilege, you think it's a great system. That system is in peril. Going back to the roots of this project, it was back in the year 2000 when I had been a dropout from this effort. I've actually been in this effort now for 19 years, off and on. No, that's probably not a correct statement to say. I first became involved in this 19 years ago. 20 years ago, I was like probably the majority of the American citizenry. I realized that there were problems, but I didn't really think that those problems were overwhelming. I thought those problems were occasional or rare things. After about 10 years of knocking around in the legal system, I realized that it was the opposite which was true. In other words, almost everything is crooked, bad, and wrong. I dropped out for a few years because I just simply could not take the monstrous evil that I had been exposed to with the court system. I wanted a refuge from it. I never wanted to see the inside of a courthouse again. I never wanted to think about legal stuff ever again. It made me sick. It absolutely made me sick to see how the system worked. But in the year 2000, two great men who are no longer with us urged me to reactivate. And I protested. I said, aside from my own cases, I have 2 wins. And they said, you don't understand. Nobody else has ever won. Nobody else has ever won anything. You know how to win. You've got to explain people how you win. Those 2 real-life people, those 2 actual living flesh and blood people, were Dorothy Borum and Timothy Speed. 2 very ordinary people, and Bill knows one of these people, Bill Bauer, my associate. 2 very ordinary people who had the courage to walk into court and stand up against teams of professional bar licensed attorneys. And even though their knees may have been shaking, and even though they may have gasped at what they were doing, they stood up to a system and they won. So that proved that just common ordinary folks could actually beat the trial lawyers. Now, even though neither one of these cases was large, $14,000 would have absolutely destroyed Dorothy. $8,000 would have destroyed Tim, because they were just ordinary people. They didn't have the resources to overcome judgments in that amount. Well, I began the project in the best tradition of, I'm not going to say fake it until you make it, because it was real, but it was in a tradition of, okay, we've had a little success, now let's expand it. Today, I cannot count the number of victories that we've had. Most of them have been small. Most of them have consisted of making the establishment go away and leave us alone, but that's a victory. It's a victory because you get to keep your money in that case, and you deprive them of their sustenance. The very first duty that we have to ourselves when we are contesting with the legal establishment is to cause them to waste their time and their resources fighting us. I couldn't find it, but several months ago I got a copy of a brief filed by a U.S. attorney from the tax division in Washington. And she was complaining, "Judge, you need to throw this case out because we don't have the resources to fight this type of case." I rejoiced when I learned that, because it tells me that if we take that particular type of case and duplicate it many times over, they have a serious problem that they can no longer deal with. They're overwhelmed. And we must do that. We're going to begin talking in the main session this morning about how we win in those smaller cases. But we're going to talk about laws being all the same. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about a $5,000 credit card or a $7 million tax bill. The rules are always going to be the same. And if you know those rules, and if you have the courage to stand up to vindicate your rights under those rules, and I'm not saying that it's easy, I'm saying that it can be done, we can win the Revolutionary War. Because again, remember, there are tremendous, tremendous factors. I turned on the television this morning up in the room for just a few minutes, and the hot topic is, is what are we going to cut? We're going to cut the budget. Have these guys been asleep at the switch or what? The budget has to be cast on what date? October 3rd. And here it is within 2 weeks, and they're just now beginning to try to sort out what they're going to have to cut. Now, I'm going to suggest to you that whatever happens, it's merely the beginning of a snowball effect. This is a government in free fall. We need to ramp up our efforts while that's going on with an eye toward victory. Now, we have had some what I would call magnificent victories. For example, Gary Basti in Florida. I met Gary. Gary was a co-host of a seminar that I did in Florida in June of 2002. Quite ironically, Gary and his brother had both been sued. Gary's brother had been sued for, I think, probably about $200,000. Gary had been sued for over $3 million. They both raised the issue of subject matter jurisdiction, and both of the cases were dismissed. So Gary got to walk away from a potential $3 million judgment. Not long after that, he was sued again. Different suit, different people, same idea. They sued him for $3 million again. And would you believe that one was dismissed? So he walked away from a total of over $6 million in potential judgments. And I don't know about you, but that would at least ruin my day. Well, actually, in probably about March of 2003, Gary was sued again, along with about 15 other people, and this time it was for over $30 million. But the judge was determined that he was not going to allow this smart aleck to get that case dismissed. The word was out. This guy knows how to get the case dismissed. He knows how to talk about jurisdiction. We're still fighting that case, but about a year ago, when we had the opportunity to do so, we filed a counterclaim in that case for racketeering. We named that judge, that federal district court judge, as a witness, and he disqualified himself, as he should have, and he's out of that case. So I think eventually we're going to get that case thrown out, but I think it's also going to be the foundation for several spin-off cases against the Trial Lawyers, Inc. I think Kevin had a copy of Trial Lawyers, Inc. That's a great publication that you should subscribe to. You can find out how in the fall of the Fourth Reich. Yes. So there is some momentum out there. Unfortunately, Nobody's going to do it for us. We have to do it ourselves. We have to have the courage to step up in this fight. But you will leave here, many of you are already very astute in the law. If you're already astute in the law, you'll leave here with a tune-up. If you perceive yourself as being somewhat of a novice, you will leave here with probably more knowledge and more legal skills than a typical lawyer can ever dream of having. That's my promise to you. I know how to do that. I know how to put you through law school in 2 days. I know how to make you a lethal weapon